Prime Minister Modi speaks with Tesla boss Elon Musk. The call comes after a meeting between the two regarding possible areas of tech collaboration. Does this pave the way for Starlink's and Tesla's imminent entry into India? As Bangladesh and China cozy up and normalize ties, is this the new two-front war that India needs to now prepare for? And as China's presence in Dhaka and Islamabad continues to grow, how will New Delhi's strategic calculus change? We decode. US Vice President J.D. Vance is all set to be in India for a 3-day visit where he will meet Prime Minister Modi on the first day. The visit is expected to set the tone for greater tech and trade collaboration between India and the US. A visit so early in the administration could prove to be very fruitful in greater alignment on common strategic concerns of the two countries. From students to tech experts, why are the visas drying up for highly qualified top talent? And as fears mount of petty past offences being grounds for visa cancellations, we ask, has the American dream all but ended? The Times 100 most influential list is out with not a single Indian named. A billion voices get snubbed. Names like Mohammad Yunus do find mention. Our big story this week on India Ascends. Well, an electric future, a celestial network, and a billion voices waiting to connect. Today, a high-stakes conversation between two global disruptors, Prime Minister Modi and Elon Musk, took place. Could that redefine the future of innovation, mobility, and space in India? Well, behind the headlines, this is the second conversation between Prime Minister Modi and Elon Musk in as many months, indicating the seriousness of intent on both sides. Both of Musk's major companies, that is Tesla and Starlink, are keen on a major India play. And New Delhi wants to be at the center of a global innovation and manufacturing revolution. For Starlink, Musk's satellite internet giant that's poised to boost India's digital growth, spectrum allocation and national security clearances are immediate roadblocks that need to be addressed. On Starlink, the Commerce Minister, in fact, met with the company's leadership only yesterday, as Indian telecom majors Jio and Airtel look to lock their own satellite deals. Remember, the space race is heating up. India wants to be a major player in it. Starlink has about 6,700 satellites already in orbit. How will this marry into India's space ambitions is the key question. Now, back on Earth, Tesla is quietly gearing to roll the redefined Model Y in India, hinting at imminent market entry. With dealerships planned, hiring underway, the electric giant is coming soon. Viewers, from space to streets, the Modi-Musk discussion, first that took place in February and today, signals many possibilities of satellites above and EVs below, where India might just become the next frontier of innovation. The phone call comes ahead of US Vice President J.D. Vance's first visit to India. US-China trade war, remember, opens up a lot of opportunities for India when it comes to trade, including fast-tracking a bilateral trade deal, the first phase of which could actually come as early as third quarter of this year. And it will, of course, the meeting between J.D. Vance and Prime Minister Modi, likely to take place on the 21st, could cover a lot of ground when it comes to shared strategic concerns. Tech, trade, and territory, viewers. In a world increasingly divided by data and diplomacy, Modi's phone call to Musk isn't just about cars or satellites. Well, it is about the future, which is most likely to run through India. All right. The first wide-angle story on the show. India's neighborhood has been tense. It has always been so, in fact. On several times in the past, it's even been hostile. Right now, viewers, there are tensions that are simmering on more than one border. Ever since Bangladesh ousted Sheikh Hasina, the democratic downslide in Dhaka and the mainstreaming of Islamist radicals, along with the growing anti-India sentiment, has pretty much created ripe conditions for normalizing of ties with Pakistan, something that hadn't happened for 15 years. Now Islamabad and Dhaka are looking to build ties from defense to trade. How wide-ranging could this possible partnership be? And why this could be the new two-front war that India needs to prepare for? This report has all the answers for you. After 15 years of cold silence, Pakistan and Bangladesh are back at the table. This time possibly with China playing silent partner. Pakistan's overtures to Dhaka aren't just olive branches, but calculated moves to build an anti-India nexus. From the embers of 1971's bloody birth, ties have now thawed, quietly, carefully, and now conspicuously. Bangladesh's interim regime, led by Mohammad Yunus, has shown China the welcome mat while giving India the cold shoulder. The message was loud and clear. The northeast is landlocked and Bangladesh the only key. A dagger pointed at the Siliguri corridor and India's sovereignty. Add China's warships prowling the Bay of Bengal and possible intelligence pacts between Islamabad and Dhaka, and the threat morphs from possible to probable. The ISI's footprints in university radicalization, China's eyes on the Teesta, and Dhaka's provocations are not isolated instances. They are coordinated pressure points. The dragon, the dagger, and the double game. India is no stranger to confrontation, but the present geopolitical landscape will require New Delhi to think out of the box with deft diplomacy. Viewers, the two-front war that New Delhi has been fully prepared for till now has been the China-Pakistan nexus. But the Bangladesh-Pakistan growing bonhomie changes some of these dynamics because Beijing is wanting to fill the vacuum in Bangladesh, take advantage of its economic mess and the growing instability, just like it did in Pakistan. Infrastructure projects are never just that. They are means to a larger strategic geopolitical scheme. For India, this means a complete realignment of its calculus. Even when New Delhi responds to Beijing's positive overtures on trade, it needs to be more than just careful. It needs to be wary. Is this how the American dream ends? Well, viewers, from college campuses to corporate boardrooms, Indian students and techies in the US are watching their futures unravel. Visa calculations, job cancellations, job losses, and legal limbo have sparked panic. And for many, it's a ticking clock with no clear answers. Our special report uncovers the fear, the uncertainty, and the fight for survival in what is turning out to now be an increasingly hostile landscape. They came chasing the American dream. But now for thousands of Indian students and tech professionals, it's turning into a nightmare. From the classroom to the courtroom, more than 1,000 international students have seen their visas vanish without a trace, like pulling the rug out from under their future. Universities across 40 states are scrambling, left in the dark by the federal government's sudden and unexplained status terminations.
International students are really scared. They've been talking to us faculty almost a daily basis. They're constantly worried, they're constantly fearful. They don't know if they could be deported. There's been no due process. Students have been whisked away with no cause, no sort of process or procedure.
For Indian student Chinmay Deore, it wasn't just a glitch, it was a potential one-way ticket home. He and others are now suing the Trump administration, alleging ICE revoked their status without any reason, warning of arrest and deportation. As lawsuits pile up, fear spreads faster than wildfire. Even the Indian government has stepped in, scrambling to offer a safety net.
But for many, the damage may already be done. Meanwhile, it's a bloodbath on the job front. Indian techies on H-1Bs are caught between a rock and a hard place as layoffs sweep the industry. Posts on social media read like digital SOS signals. Liberation Day layoffs. That's what techies are calling the purge, as giants like Microsoft and Google cut thousands. Startups are folding, contracts are drying up, and Indians who received over 72% of H-1Bs last year are bearing the brunt. Even the lucky ones still in jobs are feeling the squeeze. Delayed raises, hiring freezes, and discrimination claims against firms like TCS are deepening the gloom. The road to Silicon Valley now has potholes of policy, politics, and prejudice. As the American dream flickers, Indian students and techies ask a question no visa can answer. Was it all worth it?
From denied dreams to digital despair, the fallout is still unfolding. As lawsuits brew and livelihoods hang by a thread, one thing is clear. The promise of the US is now under strain. And for many Indians in America, the land of opportunity now feels more like a land of obstacles. But remember, this is not a one-way street. Indian students play a major role in keeping US universities viable and profitable. Likewise, Indian techies power up the American economy. There are 39 Indian American CEOs in a country which ranks 24 out of 37 OECD countries in science, tech, and engineering. America needs this talent, but this attitude is more self-destructive than ever before. All right, viewers, on that note, we slip into a break. We come back on the other side. The top voice, Dexter Roberts, joining me from Atlantic Council to decode what the US-China trade war means for India and how New Delhi can make the most of this opportunity. More on that after this break. Stay with me.
More news that matters.
Big exclusive. Tulsi Gabbard.
All the parties should accept their verdict with all humility.
Why the opposition to it? Why taking big steps?
More debates that shake the system. More exclusives you won't find anywhere else. Not just another prime time.
Hello and welcome to The Southern View. I'm Veera Raghav.
This is the news break and I'm Vasudha Venugopal. This is The Last Word and I'm Maria Shakil.
Left, right and centre, and good evening and welcome.
It's a prime time that's unmissable.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news is here.
Indian students showdown with Donald Trump while companies put H-1B. All right, top voice on the show this week, Dexter Roberts, non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Global China Hub, to talk about the US-China trade tension and how should the world be bracing for it. Mr. Roberts, thanks so much for joining me on India Sense. Let me start by asking you, how do you see these tariffs layered on top of tariffs by both sides, the trade war between US and China only escalating in the last 1 week?
Well, I think we're now at a point where the tariffs have reached a level on both sides that pretty much bring most trade between the two countries to a halt. And this, of course, has implications not just for the US and for China, but for countries including India around the world. Obviously, China is a key link in global technology and other supply chains. It's also the world's second largest economy, and it's been an important driver for global economic growth as well. China's already facing a slowing economy. The trade war is certain to bring growth down there.
Yes.
And similarly, we've seen this economic chaos almost in the US with the very high tariffs reflected in stock markets, and eventually, I think, starting to be seen in the job market as well.
Yes. Okay. But in terms of the impact on global trade, if you could just decode that for our viewers in simple terms, because you're talking about the largest and the second largest economy pretty much now coming to a standstill in terms of their bilateral trade.
Well, I think it's hard to exaggerate how serious it is. This would have a real substantial blow to the global economy. Again, China plays this key role, particularly in technology supply chains, so that many of the products that around the world that are bought in one way or another come through the China global supply chain. Again, the economic impact of having two such important economies, as you say, number one and number two, see a downturn, more of a downturn, is something that really affects everyone around the world.
You mentioned tech supply chains. The NVIDIA CEO was in China at a time when global tech supply chains are likely to be hit. How do you see the technology landscape changing, whether it is semiconductors or whether it's any other high-end tech value chain?
Well, I think one very likely impact is higher prices for all of us. China has created a really admirable environment, if you will, for global supply chains. The logistics systems are in place. The labor, by and large, is there. It's lower cost. Moving that somewhere else in the world, which sort of has to happen if this trade war continues, is going to bring up costs for everyone. And it's not going to be a smooth process either. The technology supply chains that have been built up in China have happened over years and years, and it's not a simple matter of just picking them up and moving them either to a neighboring country or to the United States, which frankly is less likely because of the costs there.
Mr. Roberts, this is India Sense, where we always talk about what is it that will take India to be a superpower. I want to ask you, how can we make, or India make, the best possible use of this trade opportunity where we are in a better position, we have lower tariffs, and there are trade deals that are on the anvil? How do you see India making the most of this situation?
Well, obviously, India has already been a beneficiary to a degree of efforts to diversify the global supply chain out of India. We've seen big brands like Apple and others encourage or even put pressure on their suppliers to try to move outside of China, and often India has been a location for that. India, if it continues to keep tariffs low, given also the very, very large size of the Indian market and the potential there, it's quite a natural next step for companies as they diversify away from China.
And outside of the tech domain, what about some of the other sectors where you think we are best primed to possibly make use of these trade tensions?
Well, obviously, the pharmaceutical sector in India has done very well. That's another area. Really, you can look across the board. I mean, India still does have quite low costs. I think many industries could step forward and potentially benefit from this effort to diversify away from the world's reliance on China.
All right, let's leave it there. Mr. Dexter Roberts, thank you so much for joining me live on what could the implications be of the US-China trade war for India in terms of opportunities that it throws up. Thank you so much. All right, turning focus now. Turning focus now to the first inside story on the show. Advanced voting, viewers, for Canada elections opens Friday after Prime Minister Carney announced a snap poll just weeks after coming to power. This is the first election in a decade where there's no Trudeau who's on the ticket. and it happening after his disgraced exit from the party earlier this year. Well, with him going, the Liberal Party's prospects have actually increased since then. With just a week left for the elections, listen in to what Prime Minister Mark Carney had to say, really setting the tone for the last lap of the election campaign.
The relationship we had with the Americans, these guys weren't wrong. They want us to be the 51st state. They want to break us. They want to break us so they can own us.
So the second and final election debate in English saw some very sharp one-liners from the primary candidates, but it was largely a very lackluster debate. At least there weren't any fireworks that Indians are used to. It was even pushed around to give prime-time TV viewing to a hockey match. That just tells you how Canadians view their priorities. But there's one thing that it did show. It showed that the road to victory in Ottawa now passes through Washington, as the Trump factor weighs heavily in who the Canadians will choose as their next leader to steer the country at a time of great political as well as economic uncertainty. And this is getting reflected in the messaging of the two primary candidates, the Liberal leader Mark Carney and the Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. While Carney's messaging has been largely focused on fear of Donald Trump, fear of his threats of annexation, fear of his more trade wars, Pierre's messaging has been completely opposite. It's been a lot about hope of an economy that could do well if taxes are brought down, if cost of living expenses are brought down, and so on and so forth. Whereas immigration fit into both of this is anybody's guess. But the Canadian election result may or may not, viewers, be a referendum on Donald Trump. But it's turning out to be an election where neither party seems to have answers or a broader roadmap. Canadians are looking for not just answers, they are looking for a vision. Whether they get that from any of these two leaders remains to be seen, and only time will tell whether that will provide Canada and Canadians the answer that they are really looking for and the voice that they are hoping to achieve. It's the Worldview segment on the show. First up, Dhaka's finger-pointing has triggered a diplomatic storm. Bangladesh has rattled by its own record of over 2,400 attacks on minorities this year alone, dares to lecture India on communal harmony. Their statement on West Bengal, a localized eruption amidst deep constitutional protests, is unwarranted. It was opportunistic, and India gave a response that was befitting, unflinching, a reminder that, and not just a retort, which was that focus on your own backyard. While Bangladesh warns of Muslim minorities in India, a secular democracy where due process is the rule, the world watches temples razed, Hindus displaced, and justice delayed across the border. The bottom line is, Bangladesh, before you preach, protect, because in matters of minority rights, silence is complicity, and so is hypocrisy. This is not geopolitics, this is accountability. When justice is muzzled and truth is trampled, you call it anything but law. Tonight, we rip the mask off Pakistan's sham justice, a system that makes a mockery of international law and by now its own admission buries basic human rights 6 feet under. Kulbhushan Jadhav, an Indian citizen who was illegally detained by Pakistan from Iran in 2016, sentenced to death in a kangaroo court. Pakistan's full story has finally come out. Of course, it's full of holes like a fishing net. And now, under oath, Pakistan's Defense Ministry has spilled the truth to its Supreme Court, saying that Kulbhushan Jadhav was never given the right to appeal. Let that sink in, viewers. The ICJ ordered consular access, but what good is access if the door to justice is bolted shut? Now, Pakistan, well, later on passed a law in 2021, too little, too late, a bandage on a bullet wound. And even that law is twisted to fit their convenience. A legal window dressing that is nothing but covering up for a miscarriage of justice, so grotesque it echoes in every diplomatic hall and courtroom around the world. Remember, Kulbhushan Jadhav is not just a name, he's a symbol of how far one nation can go to rewrite reality. Pakistan plays judge, jury, and executioner as the world watches. But remember, India will not forget, and India will not be silent. Harvard, once the crown jewel of American academia, is now caught in the eye of a political firestorm. The Department of Homeland Security has thrown down the gauntlet, demanding a sweeping data dump on international students, or else, who knows? The warning is crystal clear that you must comply or watch your visa privileges, your grants, and your reputation go up in smoke. Secretary Kristi Noem isn't mincing words when she accused Harvard of turning a blind eye to anti-Semitism, harboring radical ideology and letting extremism fester on its watch. The message, loud and clear, the days of ivory tower immunity are now over. Billions of dollars in grants are now frozen. Foreign students are under the microscope and the school's tax-exempt status is on the chopping block. This isn't just a slap on the wrist, it's a political earthquake shaking the very foundations of academic freedom. Harvard, for its part, says it won't flinch. But in this high-stakes showdown, one thing's clear. When politics walks the front door, independence is the first thing to slip out the back. In the shadows of American history, truth isn't just stranger than fiction. It, in fact, outwits it. From remote-controlled dogs to Happy Days sex tape blackmail. These aren't Bond films, they're real CIA ops. A G.I. Joe turned demon toy designed to haunt the children of the Middle East. Well, there's also mind control that made people kill and then forget. There was a fake sex tape that was meant to destroy a president who loved it so much that he tried to make it a blockbuster. There are even remote-controlled dogs in the name of science. Because why not? Psychs, aliens and spoon benders. Yes, the CIA tried it all. Millions were spent, but the results, well, viewers, are still classified. If these are the unclassified files, what secrets will come out remains to be seen. One can safely say the CIA is where the reality is redacted and history wears a wire. And Time magazine has dropped its 2025 list of the 100 most influential people, and not a single Indian citizen made the cut, not one. India, the world's most populous democracy, tech superpower, cultural juggernaut, and a rising global voice. It doesn't need a Time list to be influential, but it's reflective of the bias that the magazine has against India. But guess who did make it to the list? Mohammad Yunus, the interim advisor to Bangladesh government, currently facing backlash and controversy. Last year, there were names like Alia Bhatt and Sakshi Malik, icons in art and activism. But this year, there is complete silence. We ask, is this oversight or is it outright erasure? Time says it honors those who shape the world, but India is shaping the century, from Chandrayaan to Chandni Chowk, and yet it's silence and it's sidelined. Let's call a spade a spade. This isn't just a statement. This is about snubbing a billion voices. It's not a miss. It could even be termed as a mockery. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of India Sense. Thanks so very much for watching.
तू ही तो है जिसकी सच्चाई वाली क्लैरिटी की वजह से मैं आज यहाँ हूँ।
गोल्ड प्लस सिल्वॉक्सी मिरर्स, ऐसी क्लैरिटी कि आपको सिर्फ सच नजर आए, चाहे कितने भी साल बीत जाएं।
News is not just headlines, it is what impacts you. And news should never be mistaken for noise. What matters is the reality. Accurate, in-depth, and with the right perspective. For over 20 years, I have been a journalist, and never has clarity mattered more than now. At Newsnight, we go beyond the surface. We dissect the details, challenge the narratives, and bring you the unparalleled clarity you deserve in a world clouded by misinformation. We are bold, we are direct. Newsnight, for the news in your interest. Only on NDTV 24/7.
I've been reporting on all issues, big and small, from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Mishti is also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
In the last 1 month, if you see, the share prices of Denzol Engineering has fallen more than 58%.
Why are the rating firms calling the debt payments as default?
We have two
credible credit rating agencies on March 4th coming and downgrading the stock to D.
Statements are consistently being proven wrong, and transactions are being taken place which are different from what they were originally pictured to be.
The company claimed it would roll out 6,400 electric vehicles. But what it has rolled out is a shocking scam. Funds meant for the project were funneled allegedly back to the promoters, the Junkie brothers. What did
West Bengal governor reaches Malda to meet victims. NHRC team also has reached Malda to meet victims. NCW chief meanwhile has said that there's a need to ensure safety of victims. On Waqf violence, TMC blames Home Minister Amit Shah. BJP also slams Mamata Banerjee's alleged appeasement politics. Punjab top cop calls terrorist Happy Pasia's arrest a major milestone in the crackdown of terror. Pasia orchestrated attacks for 20 years. Karnataka Chief Minister Siddaramaiah refutes rift reports on caste survey. Jagdeep Dhankar's remarks spark a political slugfest now. Kamal Hassan's Mani Ratnam's Thug Life. Kamal Hassan, Mani Ratnam, A.R. Rahman have reunited for Thug Life now. First single from Thug Life, Jingucha, was launched today. Well, the film premiere of Ground Zero in Srinagar marks a historic highlight in Kashmir, being the first film premiere in almost 38 years. Now, this event signifies a step towards normalcy and also peace in this part of the country. Now, this screening, attended by stars in Srinagar, highlights the resurgence of cinema in Kashmir after a long break. Now, the special screening is also dedicated to BSF, with soldiers and officers attending it as guests of honor. My colleague Nazir joins us with more details on this. Nazir, tell us how significant and special is this movie screening in Kashmir? All of us are really fond of movies. So tell us, has this brought in a smile to the faces of Kashmiris? How are they looking at this?
Well, amid this drizzle here, this grand premiere of Ground Zero, a movie on BSF which depicts the situation in Kashmir when BSF was the frontline counter-insurgency force, and it is going to be this red carpet grand premiere of this film, and you can see BSF Jawans here standing here because all the BSF officials are here to watch this movie. BSF Jawans and senior officers. Kashmir is a long legacy of Bollywood, and it is as old as Bollywood itself because the first cinema in Kashmir was opened in 1932. In fact, 2 years before, the Bombay Talkies Studio was launched in Bombay. So that is the kind of history, and then there was a violent disruption because of the militancy in 1989. Let me talk to a young guy who has come to watch this premiere of this film. And this is actually the first public showing of the film. And in fact, let me remind the viewers that last year, the launch of Leila Majnoon here, and this is the first time a film is being launched from Srinagar after it was exclusively, intensely, shot in Srinagar. आप ये बताएं कि you are invited for the...
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, I've been invited here for the screening of the movie Ground Zero. My name is Ayan Sajjad, and by passion, I'm a singer.
You are a singer, that's
Yeah, I sing Kashmiri songs, and I believe I'm quite renowned in the valley, alhamdulillah. And my first song has been Bedar Dadi Chane, which has over 10 million views right now. And I've been invited here by Mr. Arhan Bagati, and I believe this is a really good step.
So you see, young people would see the situation that time and the transformation Kashmir is witnessing over the years.
I believe this is a good step because the people who are coming here, like Imran Hashmi sir is coming here, Farhan Akhtar sir is coming here, it's like, it's a really big step for us because it's going to inspire a lot of artists. Like, it's going to inspire me and at the same time all the artists who don't have a platform yet.
So, young singer, thank you so much. So, here this film means a lot. This grand premiere of Ground Zero means a lot. Why it is important? It talks about the commitment and the sacrifice of the BSF and how they have dealt militancy over the years when BSF was the frontline counter-insurgency force in Kashmir. It talks about also how Jaish chief Ghazi Baba was killed in an encounter by the BSF during that time, those heydays of militancy. So it is quite interesting film in many ways because it also shows the things, how things have actually changed. Here now you have the first cinema hall, functional cinema hall here in. Let me talk to one of my old friend, SM Sai, who was former Director General of Police, who has specially come here to watch this movie.
Is that so?
You tell me, what this film, this movie means to its premiere launch?
I have absolutely no idea about the film, but I'm sure it's got a lot of significance because of the way it's been promoted, and I'm sure there's a good storyline to it.
Okay. So because you remember you were working here that time and it was BSF was the frontline counter-insurgency force, then it was replaced by the...
No, there's no doubt the BSF did a very lot of work.
We have so many big encounters in Srinagar, including...
No, BSF did a commendable job. I remember they were instrumental in the capture of Ghazi Baba, or rather his neutralization. Right. And I think in the early days it was they who did most of the operations. Right. They had a lot of important catches.
And this film is the reflection of that, what has changed now.
But you should be making a film on JNK police, for God's sake.
So the police officer saying there should be a film on the police also. Nevertheless, it is something which everybody is waiting, this grand premiere, first public showing of Ground Zero here at Srinagar Inox Cinema.
Thank you, Nazir, for joining us with those details. Moving on to other stories, other important stories. Days after the landmark Supreme Court judgment that effectively set the deadline for President and governors to clear bills, Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar has used strong words for the judiciary, saying that we cannot have a situation where courts direct the President. He also said that Article 142 of the Indian Constitution, which gives the Supreme Court special powers, has become a nuclear missile against democratic forces available to the judiciary 24/7. There's more to this. Rajya Sabha MP and senior lawyer Kapil Sibal has now strongly criticized Jagdeep Dhankar's comments on the Supreme Court's ruling regarding the powers of the President and governors. Remember, the court had ruled that the President must act within a reasonable time on bills and had struck down Tamil Nadu governor's indefinite withholding of state legislation. Now, Mr. Sibal has argued that governors and president are constitutionally bound to act on the advice and aid of Council of Ministers, and delaying or withholding bills undermines the supremacy of the legislature. Now, in this context, is Mr. Dhankar's analogy of Article 142 being a nuclear missile against democratic forces, is this fair characterization? What checks need to be put in place, and if they are really necessary? And more importantly, the larger question here, is there really a blurring of lines that is happening when it comes to separation of powers? That is what we discuss in the course of next 20 minutes. Joining me now first is legal scholar Faizan Mustafa. Thank you, Professor Mustafa, for joining us on this broadcast. My first question to you, sir. Do Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar's comments suggest a violation of the principle of separation of powers? Or do you see this as a justified criticism of judicial overreach, which also happens sometimes?
No, Vasudha, we need to understand that what is the constitutional scheme of checks and balances. Unlike the British Constitution, where we have supremacy of Parliament, where it is said that Parliament can do anything except to make a man a woman, woman a man, in India, we don't have supremacy of Parliament, we have supremacy of the Constitution. Accordingly, neither Parliament nor Supreme Court, in spite of word supreme being there in its nomenclature, is supreme. It is the Constitution which is supreme. Thus, the scheme which the Constitution has envisaged is like this. You can pass law as per the jurisdiction given to you by the Schedule 7 of the Constitution. The courts will examine your law on two issues. One, whether you have exceeded your jurisdiction. Say if you pass a law which is under the jurisdiction of the state, then the courts can strike down the law. The other thing is that the court has been given the responsibility to protect the rights of the people. Now, what are these fundamental rights? They are basically negative restrictions on the power of the state. They are denial of power to the state. So a state cannot come up with arbitrary laws. A state cannot impinge on my freedom of religion or freedom of speech, etc. So whenever any law is in contravention of a fundamental right, the courts have a constitutional duty to strike it down. Now, the matter which had gone to Supreme Court from Tamil Nadu was about a governor sleeping over bills for years together. In spite of hearing in the Supreme Court, in spite of Supreme Court's judgment about Punjab, he in one go sent those bills to the House, and when the House passed them back, he referred them to the President. Now, Supreme Court found the action of the governor as mala fide. And since his actions were mala fide, Supreme Court did not have this option to ask the governor or the president to expedite the assent to those bills. And therefore, the Supreme Court invoked a power given to it under the Constitution, which is Article 142, to do the complete justice. And Vasudha, you need to keep in mind, if there is a law, if something is mentioned in law, then Supreme Court cannot exercise its power under Article 142. It can exercise that power only when there is a silence in a provision and the law is not explicit. And therefore, invoking 142, Supreme Court has laid down the timelines. There can be a difference of opinion whether timelines should be there or should not be there. The criticism of judgment is permitted because it is in exercise of freedom of speech and expression. The Honorable Vice President of India himself is a senior advocate, is aware of court proceedings. He can criticize any judgment, but some of the words probably could have been avoided, saying that judges are above law and they have no accountability, or look at, money was found at some judge's residence, some burned notes, and nothing has happened. Or that Supreme Court is using 142 like a nuclear missile. I think these words can better be avoided, at least from someone who is chairing the upper house of the parliament.
Right. Professor Mustafa, also the two parts of that one question that, in my view, can summarize this whole controversy. Should those holding high constitutional offices comment publicly on another pillar of the Indian Constitution? And should somebody at the level of Mr. Sibel's seniority, shouldn't he also be a bit more restrained?
You see, constitutionalism, Vasudha, is all about staying within your limits, or staying within what in India we can call within the Lakshman Rekha. So nobody should cross that Lakshman Rekha. People should not cross it. Constitutional holders of offices should not do it. So judges should also restrain from making comments about the executive and the legislature. And in our constitution, there is a provision that you cannot discuss the conduct of a judge in the two houses of parliament, except when the impeachment motion is under consideration. So the constitution tells us how we are supposed to behave. So I believe that everybody should exercise limited powers. This is what the whole idea of constitutionalism is all about. You may have a constitution and not constitutionalism. After all, Hitler had constitution, Weimar constitution, but that constitution did not have constitutionalism. Constitutionalism means nobody is free to do whatever they want to do. Your liberty ends where my nose begins.
Those insights of yours. Also joining us now is Aman Lekhi, former ASG of India. He's also a senior advocate. We have Shadan Farasat, senior advocate, Supreme Court of India. We have PVS Giridhar, senior advocate, Madras High Court. Thank you all of you for joining me on this broadcast and also waiting patiently. Mr. Lekhi, to you first, sir. The battle here is also between separation of powers that the VP spoke about and on constitutional roles and boundaries. How do you see Jagdeep Dhankar's comments and Kapil Sibal's subsequent response to this?
Well, as far as the Vice President is concerned, there's a fair amount of rhetorical flourish and a lot of bombastic. I personally feel that his comments are both unnecessary, unwarranted, and ungrounded, and betrays a complete lack of understanding of even the constitutional provision which he's invoking. The context of this particular comment was the judgment of the Supreme Court on the bills which the governor had actually refused to assent and had withheld and referred to the president. What was at play were two provisions of the Constitution which the Supreme Court interpreted. There's 200 and 201. They deal with the governor and the president. What the Supreme Court did under 142 was consequential to its reasoning insofar as 200 201 is concerned, and it said something rather basic. It said that everything has to be done in a reasonable time frame, and therefore you cannot delay it unreasonably. This is something so basic that you don't need a constitutional provision to in fact sustain it. The reason for the Supreme Court having to say this was the law till the Supreme Court passed the order was the discretion of the governor was not subject to judicial review. The assumption of that exemption was a belief that the governor, holding as he did the constitutional post, would act in a manner appropriate to his position and not delay for considerations extra legal or political. Because that assumption failed, the court intervened by formulating a rule because discretion in law cannot be arbitrary or absolute. So all the court did was that yes, it's not as if you don't have the discretion, but you modulate that discretion in a manner law permits and exercise the function diligently and within a reasonable period of time. Now, I don't see anything wrong in this particular judgment. And for the Supreme Court to have invoked 142, that's because the period of time, 142, what the Vice President should have known and also would be knowing, is a provision which is extraordinary to deal with complete justice on the matter. Now, that is vested by the Constitution. Because vested by the Constitution, the court exercises the constitutional power.
Right.
It's not acting as an alternative policy maker, nor is it breaching the principle of judicial restraint, which is actually basic to our polity. And it's merely discharging, as it should, a constitutional function vested in it. So for this kind of condemnation and criticism which comes from the Vice President, I have serious objection because it has a very strong tendency of creating confusion amongst the uninitiated and creating some kind of angst against institution, which in the long run can be very, very, very dangerous for our country.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Lekhi, for those insights. Mr. Farasat, taking off from what Mr. Lekhi also said, then how does Article 142, how should it be interpreted in the context of democratic checks and balances? Is there really room for misuse like the VP was talking about, or is it really essential for judicial independence? Because, the question here that people are wondering is also, should the judiciary be allowed to set timelines? And yes, if it is for better governance, why not?
See, 142, as every lawyer knows, is a very simple principle. If there is a constitutional silence or there is a statutory silence, then the Supreme Court can intervene and lay down a particular principle to do complete justice. Now, in this case, what was happening, like Mr. Lekhi explained and like Mr. Mustafa before him also explained, governor was basically exercising a pocket veto, and even if he were to refer it to the president in terms of, for say, there was a conflict with parliamentary law, then there's no timeline over which the president has to decide that. Now, what happens? You have elected government for 5 years. Now, if the president were to sit indefinitely on that, you will lose a lot of credible time. So it makes perfect sense for the Supreme Court to come and say that, listen, and when we say president, for all practical purposes, it means the central government, right? So all the Supreme Court has said that the central government must decide if there is a reference by the governor in a certain amount of time. Now, what is so problematic about it that has riled up the Vice President, I honestly fail to understand. Because it's something very simple. There was a constitutional silence. There was no timeline prescribed. And therefore, a timeline has now been prescribed. In fact, should be welcomed by everybody, including the central government. Yes, we will do it. Now, the decision is up to them, whether in a specific bill they want to say that, oh, it's repugnant to the central law or whatever it is. In a given context, it can be so many different things. But the timeline is welcome. Why does anybody want to sit over a bill?
Okay.
Least of all the central government, if they want efficiency.
That's an important point, Mr. Farasat. Mr. Giridhar, also diverting a little bit, is it also appropriate for the Vice President to publicly criticize the judiciary, because one constitutional appointee also criticizing another pillar of the Indian Constitution, because there's a lot of talk about constitutional decorum here, but on the other hand, there are also people say, why not? Where should, how do Mr. Dhankar's remarks compare to the expectations and responsibilities that are often associated with the Vice President's post?
As Professor Mustafa said, he has every right to criticize the judgment, no, though not the judge. So I don't object to criticism of the judges or their judgments, but the words he has chosen is certainly objectionable. One. Second, he has shown a very shallow understanding of the Constitution, if it is his real understanding, other than for political expediency. It's surprising that he calls himself a constitutional functionary. He does not say one word about the governor delaying bills. Is that justified? And we need to note that very often these days, the executive and the governor's officers indulge in inaction. Inaction does not leave a paper trail, so inaction is preferred to an illegal action. So the court has called the bluff and said you cannot have a pocket veto by inaction. What is wrong with that? As already explained by eminent lawyers like Mr. Lekhi and Parasat, the article under Article 142, all that the Supreme Court said was under Article 200 proviso, as soon as may be is used. So that the court said cannot be more such a long period and has fixed timelines. It's about time, timelines are fixed. So therefore, I totally disagree with the Vice President's comments, and it's not in good taste at all. As a constitutional functionary, he should know the Constitution and be a little non-partisan in his remarks.
Okay. Mr. Lekhi, in the context of a lot of things that have happened in the recent past, do answer this one question. Is the political class also breaching that long established unwritten red line that we have, vis-a-vis judiciary? And in that context, do you also see separation of powers being, those lines being blurred in some aspects?
Well, I personally feel that the worth of restraint and the value of discretion is lost to the executive. And this malaise is now extended also to those who hold important positions in the legislature. In the system of governance, there's a balance of power. And judiciary is at no point of time inferior to the executive or the legislature. And it is not open to anybody to sermonize about the other or comment upon functions which are basic to that particular organ. Declaring the law and declaring invalidity of the law is quite clearly the ken of the judiciary. Now, mainly because it doesn't meet the approval of the executive, or the legislature feels slighted that its laws don't pass muster, doesn't in any way entitle anyone without cause to condemn. And in any case, when you condemn, you have to condemn in a manner as to make the condemnation acceptable. And the only way it can